joining us. Appreciate it. And this is the continuation of this year's workshop, the Small Business Workshop, Navigating the Headwinds of Crisis. And today we're going to focus on restarting your business. Obviously, with everything that's going on these days, it's critical that we begin to think about how to restart your business. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, again, Fifth Third Bank, for joining us this is our 6th year, and we thank them very much for their continued support. All right, so what we'll do is to move on, and as we move on, excuse me, my name is Mark Lee. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of the Lee Group, and also a radio host, and I'm a media contributor. I contribute to various media platforms and media outlets here in Detroit, across town. I blog for the French Detroit Business, for example. I contribute to Detroit News, also the local TV stations here in town as well, and several other things that I certainly get involved in as I'm doing this. So thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and move ahead to the next slide if we could. We're just in the process of sharing the screen, and we're going to pull it up for you. There we go. Give us 1 second. And this is our 6 years I mentioned as we referenced. So the next slide, we're talking about pivoting and restarting your business. So this slide here is from last year. This is 2019's workshop. So historically, what we would do is we would have this event face-to-face, certainly in Tech Town, and which is where this particular position, this particular slide was taken, this picture was taken, and this is from just a year ago. And as you see, people are sitting there, we're having face-to-face interaction, getting a chance to know each other, enjoy the conversation from speakers. But certainly this year we've had to pivot. And by the way, before I proceed, the hashtag is Small Business Workshops, Small Business Workshops. We want to spread this out beyond those of you just on this call, on this video chat. And also feel free to tweet. My chat room is Lee Group. You see at the bottom right of the page is Lee Group. So feel free to tweet. I will tag you and tag me. We'll retweet and make sure we get your extra exposure. We want to share this with as many people as possible. All right, back to the presentation. Excuse me. This is from last year, face to face. This is obviously pre-pandemic, right? No issues. We're having a good time. We're getting together, having a great time. Next slide, though. Even in the form of this workshop, we've had to pivot. So here's the example. We had several people, great participants last week for our kickoff. And the way the workshop is set up is we had a kickoff session last week, and now what we're doing is honing in on very specific topics. So think of today's session as us being in a conference room or a classroom style room at Tech Town. Now what we're doing is we're doing it electronically. So we've had to do what? We've had to pivot. So this slide here simply shows how we pivoted to doing this workshop online. And this is very apropos as we begin to think about this topic of restarting your business. And we know that a lot of the entrepreneurs and businesses, small, medium, and large businesses basically came to a grinding halt beginning in mid-March with the governor's orders, the stay-at-home orders. We know that the streets of Detroit were empty, the freeways were empty. A lot of us did not leave our homes for the longest. A lot of business owners clearly did the same thing. And they kind of paused their business. And one of the questions that I get a lot is, what should I be doing right now? What should I be doing right now? And Dave Jordat is the president of the Eastern region of Fifth Third. He's out of Detroit, he's out of downtown. He handles the eastern part of the state. And he and I put together some thoughts, and we wrote in the Detroit News collectively what businesses should be doing now. And as we started talking about that, as he and I penned this piece together, one of the things that we discovered was 100,000 small businesses completely shut down. Just did not open. They're gone nationally. Also over the first 8 weeks when the pandemic hit. And one of the reasons for that is you have financial challenges. You had challenges where people did not adapt, whatever the case might be. So we're going to spend a few minutes and I'm going to give you some practical advice, not the 30,000 foot level. That was last week. Now what we're going to do is to drill down to 5,000 feet. So when you leave this seminar this morning, and the maximum's an hour, I'm going to encourage you to type in your questions, by the way, in the chat room. As you have questions, please chime in via the chat room. But we're going to give you practical advice on what you should be doing right now. So let's segue, if we could, to the next slide. And what you'll see here, as you think about your business, and I'll use myself as an example as well, is look at your current situation, is pause, reassess. So when the pandemic first hit in mid-March, a lot of us, I think the entire country, all of us, myself included, we were all, quite frankly, stunned. So here we are, we're going full throttle. The first quarter of the year was strong financially. The economy was humming along. And all of a sudden, boom, we hit the brakes. Now, when I say we hit the brakes, what I'm suggesting there is we did. As a country, we basically hit the brakes. I heard this morning, what I heard this morning in the news is that, the state of Michigan, we were supposed to be entering, the entire state of Michigan was supposed to be entering phase 5 by July 4th. The governor has just announced this morning, last night / this morning, she's going to delay that now. Because what's happening is the state of Michigan is continuing, we're starting to spike. We're starting to spike. So she's going to pause the entire state entering phase 5. Now, Detroit, metropolitan Detroit, our region, we have entered phase 5. So businesses are beginning to reemerge, they're beginning to reopen. But now, because there have been spikes in the rest of the state, the entire state of Michigan now will not be entering phase 5. So think about that as we go through this discussion. So let's take this back to the business situation. So now what you should be doing, what you should have done is you should have paused and reassess your current business situation. What does that mean? Exactly what I just said. I'll use myself as an example. And I'm going to use this workshop as an example. As we started to do this workshop, we were ready to go. We sat down with all of our sponsors, and Fifth Third and Comcast Business and Detroit Development Fund and some other great partners that we had. And we started working with them back in January. We had a great program pulled together for you, going down a completely different area. The area was going to focus on Detroit's resurgence. How many businesses, and I've written about it in Cranes, how many businesses were opening? It was like we were having businesses opening weekly here in the city of Detroit, across the metropolitan area. So, but then when the pandemic hit, we had to pause. We reassessed this workshop. Jennifer Gomez, my event planner, she's helping to produce this event. She and I sat down, and we got our sponsors involved and other business people involved. We literally scrapped the original plan that we had mapped out for you this year. Threw it out the window, changed the playbook. And then we came back and we revamped the entire theme. So what we did is we paused and we reassessed. And we tried to come up with a program that was more germane and more relevant based on the challenges that we're having right now because of the pandemic. So think about that from your business standpoint. Think about it from a business standpoint. Pause, take a deep breath, and see where you are. Let's look at the financials, right? The financials. I want you to pause and look at where you are financially. As I started this conversation, over 100,000 businesses. 100,000 businesses. And I do want to say, if you're joining, if you don't mind muting yourself, we would appreciate that. Just kind of mute yourself. But over 100,000 businesses shut down. But we also know that 30% of the businesses in this country, small businesses over a 2-month period, have been impacted by the pandemic. Now, I haven't gotten into the social unrest. I just wrote about that as well for another publication. So you take between what's happened with the pandemic and the social unrest in our country from a business standpoint, a lot of entrepreneurs are hurting. A lot of them don't have the financials in place. The average business owner has 2 weeks of revenue in the bank. Think about that for a second. The average entrepreneur has 2 weeks of revenue in the bank, which means after 2 weeks, what happens? They don't have any money to survive. So what we're saying here is to review your financials, review your funding. The Lead Group, the company that I own, I did the exact same thing. I've been in business for 12 years. I'm very fortunate. I've watched my business grow, and I've actually acquired new clients during the pandemic. I think I've gotten 3 or 4 new clients since it started. But I've had to go back and look at my financials. And by doing that, what I was able to do is I eliminated the things that I realized were not necessarily sustaining my business. And I only focused on things that enabled me to sustain my business. And we all get lazy. and I say that respectfully. Think about your own personal situation. We buy things, then we say to ourselves, do I really need it? But as I was assessing my business and my financials, I realized there were certain things that I didn't need to do. So I cut them out of my budget, and I was able to cut my expenses significantly. But yet I have enough financial resources and investment in the lead group where I'm able to, I'm properly positioned for the future. So the first thing you do as you review your financials is look at your funding. Then you identify those gaps. What are your financial gaps that you may have, right? From a funding standpoint. So a lot of times when we think about funding, there's traditional funding that's going to your financial institution, sitting down and filling out paperwork and trying to get a loan, potentially. You know, there was the PPP. We've all heard about that PPP, and it certainly has smoothed out over the last several months. But that caught everybody by surprise when the businesses went out of business. When businesses were running out of money, I'm trying to say, the system was overloaded, right? So look at the traditional funding. Look at your non-traditional funding sources, such as grants, right? Such as angel investors. There are businesses and organizations out there focused on traditional financing in financial institutions. There are other organizations out there focused on non-traditional funding, angel investors, other organizations. And what you want to do is you want to identify those gaps. You want to identify those gaps where you're short, where the shortfall is, and try to determine from your perspective how you're going to fill that financial gap. So let's back up for a second. Review your current situation, then review your financial components. And then also, as you go through this exercise of what you should be doing as it relates to restarting your business, as you go through the exercise of doing that, you want to also reach out to your employees and your customers. Now, what do I mean by this? So as you're pausing, again, when you use the lead group as an example, is when we had this dark period where we could not leave our homes. We all started working from home, and some people were trying to adjust. I literally reached out to all my customers. I was just checking on them. I didn't go back asking for money. I didn't go back asking for business, because guess what? Everybody's trying to retrench. All I did was reach out. I sent out an email, just checking on you. How you doing? I want you to know I'm here for you. Same thing, I sent out a text message to all my clients, to all my customers, and said the exact same thing. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just checking on you. I want you to know that when all this is said and done, COVID-19, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. So when I say reach out to your customers, in my case, I have a consulting business. So I have intellectual property. Okay. Some of us have brick and mortars. Some of us have different types of customers, right? But the point here is that you want to reach out to them and make sure that you let them know that you're still there for them. Reach out to your employees if you have employees. Some of us are solopreneurs. Some of us have 3 employees. Some of us have 10 employees. Some of us have 100 employees, whatever. You still want to reach out to them. You want to be able to assure them that you have their best interest in mind. If you had to think about laying off employees, there's a difference between furloughing an employee and having an employee just basically walk away altogether. And that's for unemployment purposes. I'm not a labor attorney, but that's why you're reading so much about employees being furloughed, right? Even in the larger organizations versus the smaller organizations where people certainly were filing for unemployment and things like that. So you want to reach out to your labor attorney or someone to make sure you understand the differences. But the point here is that make sure that you reach out to your employees. Make sure you reach out to the customers. Reassure them. Don't go back begging for business. Don't go back asking for money. If you're a nonprofit organization, be careful as well. I have received, and I'm a public figure in the city. You know, people know who I am. They know my face. They know my name. I don't know how many emails I have received from people asking me for money. Don't do that. Now is not the time. I understand about, a nonprofit organization looking for resources. That's where you need to be creative. So as you're restarting your business, Don't go out asking for money at this point. You don't do that. And if you're a nonprofit organization, you want to come up with a strategy for how do you communicate with people, because I'm getting probably literally 5 to 10 emails a day. Think about what I'm saying. I'm getting 5 to 10 emails a day asking the lead group to write a check. Now, I'm a smaller business as well. I'm not suffering. I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed. But in this time, you want to assess. You want to understand what your customers are looking for. You want to understand your employees. You want to reassure them, if you will, that it's safe. It is, in fact, safe to go back to work. You want to make sure. You want to keep that line of communication open with your employees. Let's go to the next slide. And as we do that, going to the next slide, you're going to also be able to pivot, leverage technology, integrate. Okay. Is this the right slide, Jen? Back up. All right, go ahead. Sorry about that. Thank you. We want to leverage and integrate technology. All right, we want to leverage and integrate technology. I was talking to someone, I'm going to unpack this in a second. I was talking to someone the other day. I was on 3 Zoom calls yesterday. I did a couple of TV interviews via Zoom yesterday. I did some other Zoom technology calls. As you all may or may not know, I'm also a professor. I'm an adjunct professor at 3 different universities here in Detroit. And I've been communicating with all my students using Zoom technology. And so someone asked me about my thought about technology. And I said, you know what? Our business landscape has changed forever. We will never go back to the way business was conducted before. We said, well, wait a minute, Mark, what are you talking about? Let me give you a real life example. One of the darkest days in our country was 9/11. Before 9/11, think about how you can go to the Metro Airport. You just walk to the gate, you walk with your family, you gave them a kiss goodbye, they got on the airplane. And then when they came back, you could meet them at the gate, right? Or you could meet them at the curb. And then 9/11 hit. And then what happened to the airports? And people were saying, well, this is going to be temporary. We'll be able to go to Metro again. They've enhanced security. But guess what? Here it is in 2020, 19 years later. We've never gone back to pre-9/11. Think about that concept for a second. Now think about it in the context of business. What we're going through with this pandemic, technology. I mentioned the Zoom. We're doing this presentation today via Zoom, right? We're all getting more and more comfortable with this technology. The students, if you have students at home, are getting much more comfortable with this technology. I've been teaching online classes for 10 years, so the transition for me was not an issue. I had other professors at Eastern Michigan University and the other institutions where I teach were asking me how to do it because they were uncomfortable. But now as we've chatted, they've become much more comfortable. So my point here is that leveraging and integrating technology, you need to understand that from a business standpoint, even if you're a consulting business, think about how you can move things electronically, leverage and integrate technology. If you have a brick and mortar, how do you do that? The example I'm giving here is a Dancing Eye Gallery. It's a business in Northville, Michigan, and they sell handcrafts. They sell all of Detroit-made and Michigan-made handcrafts. They're located in downtown Northville. I found this past weekend from a local publication called The Ville, just a couple of days ago. And what's interesting, what they did is as I read the article, she said, I didn't know what to do. She said, I had no idea what to do from a business perspective. So let me read this quote to you. She didn't want to lose her business, so she shifted her operations to online sales with shipping or curbside pickup. It's caused her to sell in a new way. So what we're saying there is it takes you outside the box. We get comfortable. I'm comfortable getting in my car, driving to a meeting, right? And delivering services a certain way. Now we're reading about businesses that are offering the curbside services. We get that now. But it took this situation for her to understand that she had to learn to integrate technology. She had to learn to use and enhance her website. What she said in the article was she never upgraded her website. So now she spent time leveraging, upgrading her website, selling products and services, making it much more user-friendly. And guess what? Her sales are actually increasing because the customers who were afraid, or maybe not afraid, they were hesitant. Obviously, myself included, all of us are, to a certain extent, we're hesitant about going to a brick and mortar. So she simply shifted her strategy, integrating the online technology component, and she's not made up all the lost revenue, but she's made up for some lost revenue. That's the point of the story here. So as you think about your business, again, if you're a consulting practice, if you're a brick and mortar, I want you to pull the lens back. Think about how you can deliver your services differently. As an adjunct professor, I'm now delivering my product differently to some of you may have students that might be my student. I don't know that. But trust me when I say that all the institutions are now delivering the products differently. My radio show, I deliver my product differently. I haven't been in the studio in 12 weeks. Think about that. But I have not missed a beat. People are still listening to my radio show, my radio shows. I have more than one. I do my television interviews. I haven't been in the TV studio in 3 months. But, Fox 2 will call me and we do a Zoom interview. Or whomever will call me and we do all of the interviews via using this technology. So think about, from your business standpoint, how can you leverage, integrate technology? Don't view it as a challenge, view it as an opportunity, because now what's happening is consumers are going to demand, they're going to expect that they can get consumer services online. If you don't have that, you're going to be missing a significant part of your business. Next slide. And then, make sure that you seek legal advice and counsel. So this is an important discussion here. I want to make sure we're all crystal clear. I started this conversation today by saying Michigan, the entire state, was scheduled to go into phase 5 by July 4th. It's not going to happen now. As I referenced, the governor is going to come out and she's saying that, since we're having a spike the last couple of days, she's, and I'm not making a political statement, I'm simply giving you facts here. And according to the data, our numbers are beginning to increase again. Not necessarily in Metro Detroit, but outstate. So therefore, the rest of the state will not be entering phase 5. But yet, we read stories about how some businesses are trying to skirt the issue, and they're trying to open up a business anyway, which is contrary to what the state's orders might have been. Again, it's not a political statement, that is a statement of fact. So as you're thinking about yourself, as you're pausing and reassessing your business, I want you to seek your legal advice and counsel. I'm not a lawyer, right? So just take my words as guideposts. But what I mean by that, and make sure if you have a brick and mortar, for example, are you compliant? Do you understand the state's guidelines? Do you understand the CDC guidelines? You want to mitigate, not rise, that's a typo, mitigate the risk. You want to mitigate risk. You want to make sure that you're totally compliant. Someone called me the other day, we got into a conversation. They said, well, Mark, I want to reopen. I said, well, do you understand what you need to supply your employees? I said, you need to supply them PPPs or PPEs, right? Protective equipment. Do you understand that you might need to have the plexiglass? I said, do you understand blah, 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 blah? And I said, if you do, you need to build that into your financials. Oh, I didn't think about that. I talked to another business this past weekend. The governor reopened where, certain businesses go open a week ago, restaurants, I think 2 weeks ago. And I went and visited, and I'm always visiting businesses. And I went to visit somebody this past weekend. They still were not ready to open. I said, well, why not? We're not sure what we should do. So when I say seek legal advice and counsel, you want to make sure that you are in compliance. You want to make sure you're totally compliant, because what we're noticing, you can watch the news. I guarantee you in the news tonight, or you can read today's Free Press, Detroit News, or Cranes Detroit, or whatever. Somebody's going to try to skirt the issue and say, well, I don't agree with what the state is doing, but I'm going to try to find a way to open up my business. All right, so let's go to the next slide and kind of show you what happens. So we all are aware of this, certainly this movie chain. This was just in Friday's Cranes. And the Imagine Theaters was going to run a special celebration for Juneteenth, which was this past Friday. Everything was ready to rock and roll, and he was getting ready to, he extended invitations all over social media, including Facebook. And look at that headline. Look at that headline. It was postponed under warnings of legal action. And what the state came in and basically said this: we are going to cite you for criminal activity. Whoa. Think about that. We're going to cite you for criminal activity. Never seen a person back off so fast, cancel the event. And what he did is the organization had rationalized, well, other businesses in the state of Michigan are opening. Other businesses in the state are opening. But think about some of the businesses that were open, they were also shut down, or there was a cease and desist, because they were trying to do what? Skirt the system, trying not to understand what it takes to be totally compliant. So as you're thinking about your business, you need to understand the compliance issue. The legal stuff is serious. This state right now is not messing around. So if you think you're going to do something on the slide, right, on the side, you're going to try to skirt, keep in mind you have social media, and people they can almost report things almost immediately. So the point here is, I'm not suggesting this person didn't get legal advice. I'm sure they probably did. But after this was canceled, this Juneteenth celebration was canceled due to legal action, the person came back with a very long Facebook diatribe rationalizing why this individual felt they should have done it. And the rationalization is fine, but think about if you have kids for a second. If you have kids and you told your kids not to do something, and you know why you told them, but yet how many times have your kids come back to you to say, well, Mom, Dad, I want to do it anyway because, and they give you that rationale, right? So understand the compliance. Let's go to the next slide, please. And as you do that, not only do you want to consult with an attorney, for example, but you should have a board of advisors. A board of advisors simply, it's your network. People say, Mark, you seem like you always what you talk about. No, I have a board of advisors. I have people, I can pick up the phone right now. I could probably call 10 people, and I don't hesitate. Some of you on this call know me, some of you don't, but I consult with people constantly. I'm always looking for advice and counsel, right? Don't sit still. Right at this point today, you should not be sitting still. Don't sit here feeling sorry for yourself. I had 3 deals to the table, and because of the pandemic, they have fallen through. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Here's what happened with the lead group. I literally was going to sign 2 contracts. Yes, you see my fingers, 2 contracts. And a week before, we were going to commence the deals April 1st. I was excited, significant financial resources for the lead group. And guess what? I got a phone call, and they said, we're not going to do it right now. Now, I could have gotten upset. I could have felt sorry for myself, but who am I going to be mad at? It was business. But as I referenced earlier, don't sit still. What I did is I maintained a relationship. And I just received a phone call a few days ago. They're saying we're ready to move ahead with you. Okay. I'm not going to sit there and point fingers at anyone. No, we're all in this together. That's what people need to understand. Don't sit still. Always think ahead. I'm always thinking. Sometimes I think too much. From a business standpoint, I'm consumed by business. My family's legacy. A lot of you know my father was a legendary banker in the city. He's a legend in Detroit. Everybody knew him, and I learned from him. So I had this restless energy, and I always had it. So what I want to do is to show you a video. It's just a brief 2-minute video, and we're talking about, not sitting still. This may be the extreme, but I want you just to pay attention to this 2-minute video of a business in New York and what they did in terms of being, unique and creative. Let's see if it pulls up. Should be pulling up here. Here we go. You might have to sit through a 15-second commercial. I'm not sure. Do we have any volume? You can't hear it. Jen, probably no volume. Jennifer, there's no volume. Is the volume turned up? Okay, apparently, oh, okay. Okay, so some of you, if you had a headset on, it's my understanding you could not necessarily hear it if you didn't have the headset. So the point of that story was being creative. Here's a restaurant. They realized people could not come into the restaurant, and so they started the old concept where they took the food to the car. They offered movies, so it was like a drive-in concept, and now they got a waiting list of people making reservations. Again, just being creative. And in this particular business in Queens, New York, watched its revenue begin to increase. So they sat back, they reassessed it, they looked at the financials, and they came up with a creative idea, a creative concept. And while all of us may not do that, the point of that story was to get you thinking about your business and what can you begin to do today to think creatively. Now, some of us live in the city, some of us live in the burbs, it doesn't matter. But we've seen some restaurants here in Detroit, in the metropolitan Detroit area, where they're now offering, some downtowns, for example, have closed off the streets. And they're allowing restaurants to sell, they're replacing where cars would normally park with tables. And they will let people now sit outside for dinner, for example, because they're trying to help to generate that revenue for the lost revenue that happened because of the pandemic. My point at the end of the day here is just think creative. Think creative about your business. Even if you're a consulting practice, think creative. How do you deliver your product differently? Next slide. So as we think about couple more slides here and we'll wrap up. As we think about the new realities, again, this is Northville, Michigan. It says Northville businesses adapt to survive and they help others. And they looked at the new realities. They're looking at, this is an old historical area. If you live in the western suburbs, you get a chance to go downtown Northville. This street is a legendary street in downtown Northville. And this is what it looked like during the pandemic, right? And I drove down there the other day. Those streets are now full. And what they did is they put tables outside. They blocked off half of where that yellow line is, that dividing line. That's one side is blocked off, and they have restaurants. The restaurants put their tables out there, and the place was packed. Next slide. So the point here is that as we think about the new realities, as we think about your business, as you think about restarting your business, before we open up for questions, just a couple of things I want to reemphasize. Pause, and this is for profit and a not-profit organization, is to make sure that you pause, you reassess, review your financials, see exactly where the gaps are, where you need resources, right? Make sure you can consult with your board of advisors, talk to your legal people, make sure that you have a product or a service that's being delivered in a way that your consumers are looking for it to be delivered. That's important. And then be creative, be innovative. Do not sit still. This is not a time to sit back and feel sorry for yourself, because as you're sitting back, someone else is stealing business from you. Someone else is going to take that business from you. And it's okay to try to be innovative, be forward thinking, remain confident, remain faithful, remain focused. And I always like to finish all my comments by saying this too shall pass, but remember, we are all in this together. So with that, what I'm going to do is to pause for questions, and then we'll talk about the upcoming session as well. But any questions? Anybody would like to, you can put them in the chat room if you have any questions. Let's see here. All right. Any questions?
Mark, we're pending a few questions coming in so far. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you fine.
Okay, great. Glad. Thanks so much. But I do have a conversation topic, and a bit of a question. And I think this would probably be applicable for a lot of our attendees that are on are joining the session today. And that's about the adaptability. So you touched on it a bit as far as, from the onset and what we were seeing with this new normal that we're existing within. But I can speak from this personally as a consumer and as a small business owner. Things that we even thought were going to be our course last week are now different as of today. And I'll give just, again, this is a personal example that I'm sure many will relate to, but I belong to a couple different fitness facilities for working out. And they each had a plan, and they each thought last week that they were going to open up because of the judge's order. Well, now we're seeing all of a sudden it be very different. Obviously, the governor's, again, not a political statement, just a fact, appealing that, but also the cases are rising. So what I'm seeing is these organizations, these fitness businesses are on a dime pivoting now. So what type of advice would you give to the attendees today for their particular industries and businesses of how do they make sure that they're able to adapt to this constant changing environment that we have? Because the reality is this will be the case, right? We've seen it over the past 3 months. Week to week, there was a different environment. And I think we can anticipate that's going to be the case. So how do they do this? Is it a combination of just staying very in tune to research, obviously guidelines? One of the tips that personally I would just give is speak to your customers. The conversations I had personally with these gym owners was about my personal needs and my questions, but what type of direction would you give to the attendees?
Yeah, that's a great question. Is a couple of things here. One is to make sure you're keeping lines of communication with your customers open. You have to continue to figure out how to communicate with them, understand what their expectations are, what they're looking for right now. But even more fundamentally, you need to go back and understand your business operations. How flexible are you right now with your business operations? And what's going to drive that is based on the governor's orders, is based on staying on top of the news cycle. Look, I know that we're all overwhelmed right now with the news. We're all overwhelmed with everything that's happening locally, nationally, globally. But what I would recommend that you do is to identify the stories that are most germane to you for your business and make sure that you understand the trends. Look at what the competition is doing. Look at how they're addressing things in the pandemic. So this is not the time to sit back, as I referenced earlier. I'm gonna keep re-emphasizing this. Don't sit back and be still. You still want to be dynamic. You still want to be thinking ahead, and also come up with alternative plans. All right. As I referenced this conversation, start off by saying I teach at various institutions, and I tell my at various collegiate institutions, universities, I tell my students all the time, whenever you come up with a plan, don't just write one plan. You always want to have a realistic plan. You want to have a best case plan, and you also want to have a worst case plan. So right now, people should be having a worst case plan, meaning, okay, I've got lost revenue. I'm projecting a 25% loss, right? And as a result of that, this is what I'm going to do. So make sure that you have alternative plans. Continue talking to your customers. Stay on top of the news right now. This is very fluid, it's very transparent. One of the things I will give the governor credit for is that, and I will say the same thing about the governor of New York, I think his name is Cuomo, I believe. He's being very transparent. He's trying to keep the lines of communication open. So make sure you understand that transparency and asking questions appropriately. That's a great question. Other questions?
So we're pending some questions coming through, Mark, but I do have another one that, again, I think would be applicable for the audience. And this is about how do you specifically, or what recommendations would you give to specifically market your business? And the reason I'm asking that is that some businesses are choosing to either not reopen yet, or they may delay, or if they are reopening, they're reopening in a different capacity. So, you know, last week we heard from Rachel Lutz, and although she has the approval to open up her retail store, she's choosing not to, in person at least, because she recognizes that her foot traffic still will be very minimal. There's still the risk of, you know, the virus, and then of course you have your brand reputation that could be potentially at risk. So she's choosing to operate in a virtual environment still, even though it's retail, similar to what the example was you gave today as well with the gallery in Northville. So I think it's really important for the audience to hear about how do you communicate to your clients your new business model that exists currently in this new normal.
You have to have a communications plan. You need to, a lot of entrepreneurs that I've noticed do not have a communications plan. And what a lot of people do, and it frustrates me, quite frankly, is that here's a person's communications plan. I'm gonna go to Facebook and I wanna post a comment. And that's my communication. That's not a communications plan. Or they'll say, I'm gonna go to Twitter, and they just start leveraging. That frustrates the heck out of me when I see all these comments about businesses on Facebook. And I'm not being critical of Facebook. I'm just simply saying, as an organization, you need to come up with a strategy, a communications plan, a marketing strategy that enables you to reach out to specific segments of the population. Okay, and I think that's critical to understand. You got to understand, now my background is different. I worked in corporate America for 30 years. And I was a senior vice president, chief marketing officer for major organizations here in Detroit, as well as across the country. So my training is just exactly what I just explained to you. So what I'm explaining to you is what I do that I've learned in my corporate life is what I'm doing for my business. So to answer Jennifer's question is come up with a communications plan. Figure out when you want to, how many times you should communicate via e-marketing to your customer base. Figure out if you need to offer a special deal to incentivize them to come in. Communicate to them and figure out if you're going to come back as a brick and mortar, or if you're going to come back as a hybrid, a combination of brick and mortar and using technology. Or to Rachel Lutz's point last week, she decided she was going to reopen up in one location and she was going to come back purely as an online business. Once you understand operationally what you're going to do, then you come up with the appropriate communications plan. The other thing, as I referenced earlier in the call, the challenge that we have too with people is that they get this new idea, they over communicate. Okay, don't over communicate. Your optimal communications strategy, if you're communicating somebody once a week, that's too much. It's too much. It depends on the nature of your business. I get it. It depends on what your business objective is. I get it. But think about yourselves personally. Think about when you start getting inundated with communications, what happens? You shut down. There's some communications I get now. I don't even open it up anymore. I rip it. I rip it. And some people will send me emails. I don't open them anymore. They automatically go into my spam folder or automatically hit delete. So to answer your question, reassess your business model, look at what your key messages should be, determine your target audiences, and how many times you feel as though you need to communicate with them. But it depends on your bottom line communications, your bottom line business operations in terms of how much you want to communicate. And do not, people will debate me on this, that's okay. When you use social media, your best form of communicating, quite frankly, if you have a business and you want to communicate business, use LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn. If you want to communicate key messages in real time, use Twitter. The mistake that people make is they start communicating their business stuff on Facebook. There's nothing wrong with Facebook. You can do that. But keep in mind that you have a different audience on Facebook than you do on LinkedIn. Some people encourage you to have a Facebook page, and you probably should have a Facebook page. I don't have a Facebook page, so there's hypocrisy there, but I don't over communicate too much of my business. I will promote my radio show on Facebook. I will promote maybe a couple other things, but I can, let me give you a real life example. I can post the exact same communications message on Facebook, and I'll get so many likes or whatever you get that stuff is called, and so many views. I can post the exact same message, a business message on LinkedIn. I literally get thousands of views, thousands. And I get my stuff will go viral. And when I post it on Facebook, because you have two different audiences. Facebook is more social. I'm going to give you an update. I'm going to talk about the kind of food I'm eating, whereas LinkedIn is a professional business site. So think about that strategy. And now Instagram is another one, and you got TikTok and all these other strategies. But think about all that as part of your overall strategy as well. Keep going. Anybody else? Just feel free. Drop it in the chat box. We'll be wrapping up in a few minutes, but if you want to unmute yourself, I will allow you to unmute yourself and provide a comment if you'd like to do that as well. Please feel free. And I want you to do too is to make sure that you take, the challenge right now is take this advice and we try to bring it down to the street level for you and provide you with real life examples of what you can do today. Because what you want to do is to prepare yourself for the future. There's discussion that there's a second wave coming in the fall. Is your business ready for that? Now I will argue, I don't believe there's going to be a second wave. Whoa, what are you talking about? What I'm saying is we're not out of the first wave. And that's what I'm saying. So how can there be a second wave? Based on data, based on science, I get all that. But technically, we're not out of the first wave. Look at what the country is doing right now. We're seeing spikes in Texas and California and whatever, and Florida and Arizona, I think. So the wave is still there. So you got to ask yourself, as a business owner, am I ready for another potential business slowdown in the fall? Fair question. Fair question. Anybody else want to ask anything? Okay.
Mark, I would just probably elaborate on that as well. So, whether or not there is a second wave in Michigan in particular, and to what extent and when that timing may even occur. I think one of the opportunities everybody has right now during this somewhat of a lull, right? We're certainly in a better place right now than we were 2 months ago or even a month ago. This would be the time to prepare. So, whether or not it actually comes, when it comes, and how drastic it may be, the first one kind of caught us off guard.
Correct.
But it makes sense right now to be prepared in the event it does return, and if it is greater. Again, nobody knows for sure exactly when, what, to what extent, but certainly this is the opportunity in the moment to be prepared. So all the things that caught everybody off guard, whether it was having a safety plan, a contingency plan, the right type of savings for your business so that you have more than the 2 weeks available to you, for operating expenses. All those things that would be necessary, now would be your time to have that plan so that you will be as prepared as possible should it come back again at a, very impactful rate. So, we'll see.
But you make a good point, Jennifer. I think you make an outstanding point. Remember we were all in school, we did the fire drills?
Yeah.
Why did we do a fire drill? And I'm asking Jen, why did we do a fire drill?
So that we were prepared in case it happened. And unfortunately, for most of it never happened. But if it did, we would have known what to have done, right?
That's exactly right. And so, I appreciate that comment, because what we're talking about is preparing for, we give you a fire drill preparation. So the first fire came totally unexpected. It grew very rapidly. There's no question about that. We're not just downplaying it at all. We're in a very serious situation in terms of the virus and how it's impacting business. So think of this as your fire drill, and think of another potential fire drill, which is right now. And we're giving you an opportunity to prepare for the future. Is prepare, do your testing. Just like you told the kid when we were all in elementary school and middle school. Okay, you go to the nearest exit, you go down the stairs, you don't go up the stairs. Whatever that fire drill was, that's what we're doing right now. And that's what we want you to think of this exercise of restarting your business. You've had the initial fire, you put the fire out, hopefully. Now we're preparing you for the future, and think of this as your fire drill as well.
Yeah, exactly. And, on that note, I think what I would mention is for those that are participating today and those that also joined us last week, the entire intent of this overall series, breaking the workshop from a single day into a series, is that we have the opportunity to talk about all the different elements in detail. So we hope that you'll join us on the next sessions that are coming up. They're going to begin again.
Yeah, can you pull that screen, Jennifer? You can pull that up if you don't mind, please. If you don't mind. We have the details for the next session. Apologize for cutting you off. Because we are recording it, and I will get phone calls from people asking. So if we'll give you the particulars. First of all, next slide is here's my contact information. If you want to get connected, stay connected with me. And then the last slide. So Jennifer, why don't you walk through the last slide here in terms of our next event?
Okay, absolutely. Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. All right, very good. So our next topic is going to focus on the financial aspect of this recovery period that businesses are working through. So, how do you obtain cash? What types of options are available to you? We talked at a higher level on our opening session last week about PPP and the availability. And of course, that initial round of programs is concluding by June 30th, so coming up at the end of this week. However, there's an expectation that next phase of availability of resources may be available and released and promoted starting next month. We don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. I think we're still pending some communications from the government, from different leaders in the administration, but we do anticipate there will be a phase 2 to some type of financial support. And so we're going to have the opportunity to talk about that on our next session, which is going to focus all about the financial aspects. So we'll have the opportunity to talk about what types of resources and support exist, but then also, which is super important, what do you do with that? So how do you take this access to different financial support that you may have and do something with it? Conversely, there's going to be the opportunity in phase 2, what we're understanding, for some type of loan forgiveness or some type of furlough, at least, of payments. And so we'll have the opportunity to talk through that as well. So that way, as you are still rebuilding and improving your cash flow that's actually coming through, how do you, stay afloat? How do you, kind of offset some expenses that you might have that are still hitting right now until you have a better momentum and your improved cash flow has returned? So those are all the things that we're going to talk about on our next session, which begins July 15th. We are taking a 2-week break around the 4th of July holiday, just anticipating that some people will venture out of it and maybe not be available for the sessions. And then after that, we are going to continue. So we will have topics that also talk about your leadership aspect. How do you make sure that you're having the right guidelines, the right leadership for your clients, but also for your employees, so that you have a holistic and a cohesive plan of operation as you, again, continue through this new normal. And then finally, we're going to conclude our workshop series talking about the benefit of your network. So, obviously we're seeing this right now, and Mark touched on it during today's presentation, but the value that you have with your network around your, your social media contacts, your in-person contacts, the relationships that you have are super critical always, but especially during a time of change like this. So we're definitely going to round it out, touch on everything. And we just encourage not just participation to listen in, but certainly your questions, your interaction. We certainly want to make this about you.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. And I would like to pose, the next topic will be presented by Fifth Third Bank. Mark Baker is a senior vice president and will be sharing this topic, so you certainly don't want to miss it. And the other thing is this session is being recorded. I've gotten requests, a lot of requests for the kickoff session last week. This will be posted on Detroit Public Television's YouTube station, DPTV channel 56. Probably will be posted later today or tomorrow. So feel free to go to DPTV's YouTube channel and feel free to pull it on the link and share with others. In the meantime, there are no additional questions. Oh, one other thing, I get somebody requested about my speaking engagements. How do I get booked? Just I get a lot of requests for speaking engagements. Please feel free to just email me. I put it on the in the chat room, but it's mark@leadgroupinnovation.com. That's mark@leadgroupinnovation.com. I'll be more than happy. I'm always available to speak. I get a lot of requests to do that, so thank you very much. All right, we thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it, and go out and make it a great day. We appreciate your participation. Thank you very much.